Okay, so once we have our spreadsheet, let's actually populate our spreadsheet from our form. So I go to the live form and I'm going to put test, and then I'll put for last name student number 1, and then email address. And so I'm going to put the email address. So you want to put like test email at gmail.com. And then gender, I'm going to just put male, and then skill, we'll say skill 1 he was great, and then skill number 2 was average, and then skill number 3 was bad. And so the important thing about this email is later on what I'm going to do is this will populate my spreadsheet, and what I want to do is utilize this email address to send a custom mail merged email to this email address. So sometimes I might do the student, or sometimes I might do myself if I just want to send comments to myself. So I put my email in there. So now once I submit it, so notice that this is the spreadsheet, currently it is empty, and then once I hit submit, it's going to take all that data. It's going to tell me my response is recorded, and if I go back to the spreadsheet, it's now taken that data, time-stamped it, and then it's put it all in these specified columns. And so notice that it didn't add to my comments here, my columns here that I want to put more specific comments in. So the dark shaded gray means it comes from the form, and then the unshaded gray means that I put it in the spreadsheet. Now a key part about this is if I would add another question to my form, it'll copy over anything I've put in the spreadsheet. So that's important to note. So now what I want to do is I want to take this skill number 1, and this G stands for good. So in skill number 1, test student number 1 was good. So what I want to do is I want to go back to my comment sheet, and skill number 1, which was trapping the ball, I wanted to put good. So I would like to have this comment: the student does very well trapping the ball. He's effective at trapping the ball with different parts of his body and consistently keeps the ball under control. I want that to be in part of my email. So I'm going to pull it back to this sheet here and put it in the same row as all this other information. And so what I want to do is I want to look up what this entry is from the form in skill number 1. I want to paste the associated comment from my comment sheet here. And I don't want to have to continue copying and pasting, so I'm going to use some functionality of the Google Spreadsheets. So I'm going to put equals, which tells Google Spreadsheets that I want to put in a built-in function, and I want to do an if statement. And so notice when I do the if down here, it tells me what the arguments are. And so my test here is if this is a G, then I want to put the comment in from good in skill number 1. And so I tell Google to look and say, okay, over in this cell in F2, I want that to be equal to. Now G is not a number, and so since it's a string, I have to put it in quotes to see if it comes out to be a G. Otherwise it'll look for it as a number. And so now if it fits this condition, then I want to paste something. And so I need to go over here to this comment sheet, and I'm going to tell it that I want to put in from here. So this is what I want to put in. So notice that it'll say, when I click on the sheet, the argument is single quote, comment sheet, single quote, exclamation point. So that tells it where to look, which sheet to look, which by default is the current sheet that it's on. But since I switch sheets, so notice on this if part, it doesn't utilize that comment sheet because it's on that same page as the cell. So this tells it which sheet to look at the bottom. So I could have gone to email template and that would put email template in the single quote. Sorry, the exclamation point is with that. And then it says the cell. So I want to pick cell B2, which is skill 1 and then good. And so if it is a G, I want it to put in there. And so now the next part of my my function, it is if test a condition, then. And so now the next part is the else. And so if it's not a G, then I'm going to put another loop. Well, if it's not a G, then I want it to say it's either going to be A or B. So I start another if loop and put a comma. And then I say, okay, well, if that cell, which is in my data collection, so if this same cell, so if F2, if that's equal to an A, then it's going to be average. So I want to put in the average part. And so I go to my comment sheet, and if it's average, I want to do the same thing. This sheet, which is where I say comment sheet with the exclamation point, it goes to that sheet and does cell C2, which is the average for skill 1. And then the else part, again, I'm going to say, well, my other choice was if that same cell, F2. So if F2, if I gave them a B, then that's going to be for bad. And so then I want to put in this cell. And so then I can close off my else there I don't care about. And so I can close off this last if loop. And then now I need to close off again the else loop for the previous one and the previous one. And so when I hit enter, now that pastes it in this comment. So what it does is it goes through and it says, okay, if this is a G, then I'm going to pull in the good. Now let's say that I had put in something else. Say I put an A in here. Hopefully what it'll do is it'll pull the average thing. So when I do, it automatically pulls in the average. And then finally, if I had put a B in here, then I can see that it will change this to the bad part. So let's go back to our original G, and it'll comment through. So now the nice part is, now that I have that function in there, then that's when I'm going to end up having to copy and paste down for every single student, and then it'll populate going in there well. So I want to do the same thing for the other skills, except now I want to copy and paste that entire function in for skill 2 and in for skill 3. Now notice when I do that, it looks and it still is pasting in for skill 2, and that's because I didn't change the cell where it's looking for. So I want to go through to my, and I also am not looking at F2 anymore. I want to look at skill 2 is going to be G2. So I change all my F's to G's. Actually, sorry, this is skill 3, so I want to put H's in there because skill 3 looks at column H. So I change all those to H's, and I can see that now it's saying, okay, looking at skill number 3, what is in there? If so, it's going to go to comment sheet. So this is saying if it's a G, go to the comment sheet and then take B2. But on comment sheet, I don't want B2, which is good. I want to do skill number 3, which is in row 4. I want to put in for good B4 and then C4 and then D4. So I want to change those. And so if I go back to my data collection, I want to change this to reference B4 because 4 is the row that has skill 3. So B4, C4, and D4. And now that should put in for skill 3. And then the same thing in skill number 2, I need to change those. If I look at this, it's still looking for skill 1. So I want to do skill 2, and which is G. And the same thing, change it to G, change it to G. So it's looking for skill 2 and looking at the level of that. And now I want to put row 3, which is where on my comment sheet, I'd use my skill 2 comments. And now it should populate that with comments for skill number 2.